Welcome to the Practicing Accountant Podcast, your go-to resource for transforming your accounting practice. This podcast is for accountants ready to take control of their business and build their ideal practice by mastering the essentials, setting the right prices, defining a powerful niche, and selling with ease. We'll dive into strategies that boost profits, attract your ideal clients, elevate your services, and help you choose the most effective pricing models. We are champions for efficiency, value, and intentionality, and adversaries of people-pleasing, bad clients, and complacency. We provide actionable strategies to help you break the hamster wheel of typical accounting work. The mission of the Practicing Accountant Podcast is simple: to enhance your experience as an entrepreneurial accountant and help you turn neglected practices into a thriving business. So, if you're ready to level up your practice, this podcast is for you. Tune in and let's get to work.
We're 4 or 5 days away from the middle of busy season. By the time this goes out, it'll be halftime. It'll be February 25th-ish, which is right smack in the middle of 50 days in and 50 days to go.
That's right.
And I'm noticing some folks are starting to lose their shit.
Yeah.
It's been a tough week around here in the CPA coach's office.
Has it? Tell me.
Oh, yeah. There's some folks that are having a hard time. I'll just put it that way. There's toxicity. I'm noticing some toxicity. And I think since everything that's going on in the world right now, I think it just always has an impact on people. You know, whatever the government's doing or our country's doing or president is doing or our news outlets are saying, like, it has an impact on people. And so I think that's part of it, on top of just the stress of being busy, is part of it. But there's some real shoddy leadership going on out there. And, one of the simple things that I think people forget to do is acknowledging others. And I was a culprit of this. I was bad at this. I was always quick to say, okay, let's get it done. And let's move on to the next thing. I'm very productive, very efficient. If I saw some opportunities for feedback, like you could do this better, or this can be different next time, I was usually quick to get it. But what I was never quick to do or say enough was great job. And you're doing wonderful. And just like to stop by in the middle and out of the middle of nowhere and just be like, hey, you know what? I appreciate everything you're doing. You're doing great. And I've learned my lesson on that, and I'm better at it now. But there's a lot of that right now too. Just people so busy, they forget to thank their teams or themselves or whoever their
spouse.
Spouse. Yes, that's a big one. That's one thing that the firm that I was at did really well. At the end of busy season, spouses would receive a letter from the firm. And it would be a thank you card that said, hey, thanks for letting us borrow your spouse for the last 3.5, 4 months. And it would include like a $100 or $200 gift certificate for a meal.
I love
and,
that.
Have a date night on us. And I thought that was, it doesn't, take away the fact that the spouse was gone for quite a bit of the last 4 months, but it does at least let them know that it's appreciated and just a little something. And for those spouses who weren't good at creating date nights, now they had to. Right. So that was good.
Yeah,
but
I actually like that.
Yeah, me too. But that was one thing I noticed, or I'm noticing this week. Hours are starting to creep. I've heard across the gamut. I've got one client that's doing 70s already. I've got another one that's holding tight to 55s and some at 60s, and it's across the board. I even did some studies this week. I was doing some neuroscientific studies on at what point does someone work where another hour completely adds no production at all to their week? At what point is that law of diminishing returns so strong that you might as well go home? And of course, the studies are all across the board, but one study said anything over 45, you start to lose effectiveness, which I would say, yeah, but not so much to like stop working. Like you can keep going after 45. Another study here over 50, which I think it's worse after 50, but still you can get a lot done after 50 hours in a week. 55 seems to be the most popular response based on my artificial research. Is what I call it now. My artificial intelligent research. It's my AR, my artificial research. So 55 seems to be the number. And I think I've landed somewhere between 55 and 60. Anything over 60, you're stupid.
Yeah. Yeah.
No offense.
Pretty
to anyone working 60. I work 60 hours a week. And I noticed I fell asleep in my chair every once in a while. Like I'm just like working. Next thing I know, I wake up and I have an email that's just got an E that's just like lines and lines and lines because I fell asleep with my hand on the keyboard. Like that happened this week. It'll happen tomorrow probably. It just happens.
Good Lord.
But there is a point in time in which it just becomes ineffective to continue to work longer. So anyway,
yeah.
My point of this entire diatribe is, it's definitely busy season. Make sure everyone's taking care of themselves and each other and encourage and support and acknowledge each other for the effort, especially as we come up on halftime here.
Yep. And start making notes of what you're going to do better next year so that you are not falling asleep on the keyboard.
Or the next 50 days, just what can you do in the next 50? That's something to talk about.
That's right.
But the thing I wanted to talk about, and you prompted this, and maybe share a little bit about what you read somewhere and just kind of tee us up.
Yeah, I read a post in one of the accounting Facebook groups, and basically this gentleman was having difficulty with pushback from clients because his business is scaling and he now doesn't have the time to meet with every client. And he's getting pushback from that because they're meeting with his staff and not liking that so much. Particularly the older clients, which I understand. We dealt with that as well, where they just had to meet with the guy. They had to meet or the girl. They're just that's how they've always done it. We're going to do it that way. We're going to come in. We're going to sit down. We're going to hand you our W-2s, and you're going to tell us that you're going to prepare their turn, and then we're going to move on. But yeah, he was having pushback because he's scaling and he has more important things to work on in the business than sitting down with every single client. And I understand that. So I thought that was a good question. I think a lot of firms that were built on, one person that, their entire business goes up and down the elevator every day, that they deal with. And how do you scale past that and get away from those clients requiring your presence all the time?
There's a bunch of questions there, like, is it your intention to scale beyond that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, do you actually want to build a firm where you don't get to meet your clients,
right?
Or you don't have time to meet your clients?
Sure.
Do you want to be a firm where you're not the face of it, but maybe your team is?
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to build a firm where we just don't do that stuff or as much of it? So I think there's some vision around it. Like, is this the firm I want to build where I'm not able to spend that one-on-one time with my clients? And I think a lot of firms would say, well, I do because I want to make more money. And at the same time, I know that I want to make more money. I'm not going to be able to see all my clients as much as I used to,
right,
or as much as I did when I first started, because I've got a lot more clients now. And now I've got rankings of clients, A, B, and C, where everyone used to be an A because there just weren't enough to order them out. And now I'm able to look at them and say, okay, I get to see you and I don't need to see you. And so I think there's some intention behind it to ask, like, what is it you're intending to build? A firm that does or doesn't have that high touch.
Mm-hmm.
But what I think it really calls into, or, something you and I talked about as we started this was, service versus price. And the idea being that, there is an amount of service that in order for you to sustain your business, you're going to need to charge enough to allow you to provide that service. And if you are charging less, then the service should be commensurate with that price.
Yep.
And I think it's difficult to say, I'm going to meet with my clients, all of them, and spend an hour with them once a month, or at least a couple hours in tax planning season. And then I'm going to hand deliver them at the end of the season and pass them along the table and say, here's your return. Not that anyone does that anymore.
Right. Well, I think people do. I think people do.
I know they do. I've actually got some clients that still do. But there's that level of service, you're going to have to charge enough to allow you to do that. And your clients are going to have to appreciate the fact that you are more expensive because they get to see you.
Right.
And if you're not charging enough to allow yourself to do that service model, if that's what you want, then you got a problem. Something's going to give. Either your clients are just going to have to suffer a different level of service than you either wanted to or intended to, or your price needs to increase so that you can. I'm reminded of the firm, and I've talked about it here, and I think this was on Ron Baker, one of Ron Baker's casts, about this firm that they bought a building that was big enough to fit the people they had, and they were only going to work with like 100 clients or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And they'd lose some year, they bring some in, but they kept it at 100. And those 100 clients were paying an amount that was commensurate with the cost of the building and the cost of the people. And they just kept it there. And they said, this is it. We're not going to do any more. We're not going to do less. And we're going to serve clients just the way we want to, because we built it to the way that we get to serve them that. And they held that tight. Now, I haven't followed up on that firm and see how it does, but I suspect that without opportunities for development for their staff and seniors and managers to get to the next level, I don't think it's going to work in the long run. Because not everyone wants to stay a staff their whole career.
Right.
Or a manager. And if no one's moving out, and if you're not getting bigger so that you can afford more partners, then there's a problem with that model.
Yep.
My point being is they're intentional about, how they serve clients, and they're probably priced to allow them to serve them a certain way. And so if you have clients that are saying, I don't get to see you anymore, the answer is, you can. That's just a different model now. It's a different price. Well, we used to get to see you all the time. And you used to. And I've grown, 50% since then. And I have to pick and choose where I spend my time now. And I'm spending my time with those clients that are paying for it.
Yep.
That's maybe a hard conversation, but I mean, ultimately that's where value shows up.
Right.
The value of you and face-to-face time with clients. Like, there is significant value in that for clients. And if we haven't necessarily been charging for it.
Sorry, Doug. I think it depends on what's happening in that meeting as well. If they're simply handing you W-2s, like I laid out earlier, which, a lot of firms sit down with these pre-preparation meetings and talk about what happened through the year. I don't think that's a very valuable meeting for anybody. Like, yes, Mr. Client, I know what that W-2 is. Thanks for explaining it to me. Yeah, I appreciate that. But if it's a true tax planning meeting, then you should be charging for that, and that should be worth your time to sit down with the client. But it really depends on what's happening in those face-to-face meetings that you're getting pushback. And clearly they aren't valuable enough. The ones that you're pushing off aren't valuable enough for you to be there. Anyway, there's not enough advisory work happening or real deep level work. It's simply document exchange and walking you through the tax return process.
There's I do some speaking from time to time, and I come up with different topics that I would speak on. And one of the speeches that I'm working on is basically called How to CPA Like a Coach, or How to Be an Accountant Like a Coach. And the reason why I've been thinking about this speech and working on putting it together is because I think if CPAs and accountants were more coach-like, they would have more impactful conversations with their clients. And so it doesn't matter if they got prepared for it or not. It didn't matter if they came with a bunch of plans and ideas. What mattered is they got to share time with their clients. Mm-hmm. And when they went into these conversations with clients, they'd be extremely curious. They'd want their clients to share and talk about the things that are most important to them. They would ask questions that, weren't always trying to offer solutions, but just were trying to listen to what their clients need. And to me, that would be one of the more valuable hours that a CPA or accountant could spend with their client. That's not necessarily focused on tax planning or W-2s or books or financial reports, but just about the client. And I think there's value in that accountants just don't capitalize on. Like, they don't realize that just being able to sit down with your service provider and just talk to them and just really share an authentic conversation about their business and what's going on and what's important to them is extremely valuable to them.
Yep.
Just having someone to bounce some idea. What if I did this? Or I was thinking about doing this, or this might be exciting, or this might be a challenge. But just even having a professional sitting across the table to walk through some of their ideas and thoughts, like they pay more for that.
You bet. And that's advisory services.
Right.
That is what we're pushing everyone to go to, and what frankly the industry has been pushing everyone to go to over the past 10 years or so. What was the original, the trusted business advisor?
TBA, yeah.
Yep.
TBA became CAS, and then somehow CAS is blurred between accounting services or advisory services. No one knows which. So the acronym's busted.
Yep.
But I think for that post specifically, you got to ask yourself, why'd he post that? Like,
right.
What was he feeling when he posted that? What he's feeling is clients that are upset with the level of service they're getting.
Mm-hmm.
They're basically saying, I want you, I hired you. And that either means that he needs to charge them more so he can spend more time with them, or he needs to better train his staff that are meeting with these clients so that they're getting the same effect that he would provide.
Or set clear expectations on what this engagement is. This engagement isn't a 30-minute coffee with me. This engagement is me preparing your tax return.
Which is a great time to package, right? To say, okay, here's you're getting the bronze. Like everyone just got reset to bronze.
Yeah.
Which means you get served with the work that you need done, and that's about it. Mm-hmm. And then you got silver, where I'll meet with you once a year to talk about, your year ahead or your year behind, and just spend some time with you. Or here's the gold, and I'll spend, 1 hour a month talking to you about whatever you got going on, and we'll do it at your office or mine. And that's the, different pricing tiers now.
Yep.
So I think what this poster, this individual on Facebook, what he really has is an opportunity, not a problem. And an opportunity to redirect how he is serving clients in a more positive way so that everyone knows what they're getting. But if he finds out that everyone wants to pay for the gold package, then he has a problem.
That's good news. That means
right?
There's so much demand just to talk to him that his pricing is too low, and now he can take on a bunch more revenue with less clients. And
he needs to
sold.
Add a zero to his price, or he needs to get rid of enough so that he's still earning what he needs to and serving the way he wants to.
Yep, you bet.
But I know that at the end of the day, I've felt this. I'm sure you have, where I look at the price I'm charging a client, and I ask myself, do they deserve the level of service that I'm considering giving them?
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of cases where my answer is no.
Yep.
I had a client today that he's in a small practice southeast, and he's just trying to navigate some issues. But he has an appointment scheduled next Tuesday officially with me for 90 minutes. And, he started emailing me a day or two ago saying, hey, I'd really like to jump on a call to talk about what we're going to talk about next week. and which is something I get, not frequently, but I get often. But I look at the price I charge, and fortunately this guy's priced at a level that I've included access to me in that price. And so when he says, can I have your time? My response is absolutely. And so I jumped on a call with him for 30 minutes today and talked through what he's going to talk to me about next week. And he's happy. I'm happy. I didn't feel like I got abused, and I didn't feel like I got run over by the request, but it's because my price was set to allow the service to occur the way it did.
Yep.
And now if he had been at a different price point, or let's just say, significantly lower than what he's paying, or even just lower, like I probably would have said, hey man, we're going to meet on Tuesday. Let's just, send me an email.
Yeah.
Put your thoughts in an email, send it to me. I'll take a look.
Yeah.
Or maybe I just would have said, let's just wait till Tuesday.
Mm-hmm.
But he was at a point where I don't feel guilty right now sitting here saying it, that I carved out a half hour of time today free. I'm not going to charge him extra for it because it's implied in the price I'm charging, and to meet with him.
And so right there is an example of pricing intentional pricing allowing you to serve a client better. And people think high prices are this gouging practice, and it's dishonest to try to get the most out of a client, but that's not the case. It's allowing you to run a reasonably successful business while providing more value than the client thinks that they're paying for, or feels that they're paying for, and everybody wins. And it's not it's not a bad thing.
Well, we instantly go to devaluing our time. Why? Because that's just what we've been taught. So it's been ingrained in our heads that we're just not as valuable as maybe some other things. But common conversation that you and I have had, not recently, but in maybe a year or two ago, year and a half ago, was just understanding just how valuable our time is as professionals in this industry. Yeah. It's not just the hour we spend with them. It's years of developing the business we're in, of learning all the things we've learned, of experiencing all the circumstances we've had to deal with clients, all the headaches, all the problems, all the things we learned how to fix, all the obstacles we learned to avoid. All that comes together in a little hour-long meeting with a client. So, they're getting the value of all of that in 60 minutes.
Yep.
And so it's not just about the moment it's like lawyers. They charge $900 an hour, right? Some of them are in four figures an hour.
That's crazy. Yeah.
And it's not because of that moment. It's because of all the experience and all the things that they're bringing to the table when they meet with you. That allows you to have access to someone that's experienced and as much of an expert as they are.
Yep. And hopefully, this isn't an hourly conversation, but it allows them to answer your questions in 15 minutes with all that experience.
Right.
Instead of taking, 30 hours of research.
Right.
So
having to go out and experience it on their own or look it up, or, just having all the experiences that show up in that moment to talk to a client is worth a lot. So, in response to that post, I think what's happening to that individual is that they have gotten ahead of their skis and they are no longer being intentional with how they run their practice. Their practice is starting to run them.
I think what happened is this guy started a firm. He has legacy clients that he is loyal to, which we all are pretty loyal to our legacy clients. And he cannot serve them in that same low price, high access position anymore. So I don't know if he got there unintentionally. I think that is sometimes just the nature of starting a company.
Sure.
So I don't know that he took any missteps to get there. I think that's a pretty common problem at a certain stage in scaling.
Well, I love that you said it that way. It brings me to another conversation this morning with a bunch of independent accountants. So these are all, folks that own their own practices. Most of them are SOHOs, single owners. And there was a brand new practitioner in the group and asked a question, 20 or 30 people that were there, like, any tips, any suggestions? I'm just starting out. I've been given advice that I shouldn't just take any client that shows up. I've been given advice that, I should be getting my ideal client. And, the room, gave some varying responses to him. And, there was some astute comments, maybe my own, that said, those people that are telling you that you should be, a little picky about the clients you take on when you're first starting, I guarantee you they weren't.
Right.
And they got to where they are today because they did take nasty clients at the beginning.
Yep.
Because they did what was necessary to start their business, to provide an income to support their lifestyle and family. And yeah, there comes a point in time when you're no longer able, to your point, see everyone, spend all the time you used to spend with them because you've grown to a point you wanted to grow to. And that's just an inflection point. Yep. That's a time in which you say, okay, I've gotten here. Now, what do I want the rest of this to look like? What do I want the next mountain to look like that I'm climbing? And that's the opportunity to create these packages or to price it differently and to make yourself a little bit more exclusive.
How many firms are stuck in that so-called inflection point, the perpetual inflection point of
Totally.
taking on everything that comes to the door just for revenue's sake, I guess.
Yeah. And it's probably where this guy that posted is probably at and maybe he's just gotten to this inflection point, or maybe he's been there for a while, but it's the point in which you say, the way I used to do it no longer works.
Yep.
And I think a lot of, to your point, accountants, CPAs stay in that. This isn't working. I'm going to keep doing it.
I'm going to do it even harder.
I'm going to do it harder and more. And I'm going to see less of my clients now, to the point where the clients start firing them and moving on and going other places and leaving Yelp reviews or whatever they might do.
Yep.
But that's really the opportunity, is when you get to that inflection point, it's not for the sake of, okay, let's just keep doing that. It's for the sake of change, potentially some pricing packages, value-based pricing, creating some exclusivity of meeting with them, and really taking advantage of this, not as a problem, but as an opportunity.
Yep. Absolutely. Good way to wrap it up.
Yeah, that closed it. So
Awesome.
Another episode in the bag for Practicing Accountant podcast, and I hope, being halfway through the season, everyone takes a moment to kind of reflect on this inflection point at 50 days in and say what is going well and what isn't, and what can we change for the next 50 days. And to my earlier point, make sure you acknowledge yourself or your team for the work they're doing. And we'll look forward to talking to you on the next episode.
Awesome, man. Thanks.
Cheers.